Speed Kings on the Xbox. A game that I genuinely could not tell you how I got a hold of. I think it's been sitting on my shelf in an unmarked box for a good couple years, well before I got an Xbox. So how I got this and why I even have it is beyond me, but I had it, so well, here you go. It's an arcade racing game made by Climax and published by Acclaim, oh lordy, and it's kind of all over the place, honestly. I think the first thing we need to talk about when we talk about gameplay here is the controls, because they're not exactly intuitive. You have accelerate map to A button, which that's a little awkward but okay, while X is brake, or at least one form of brake. And then you've got your left trigger, which seems to be completely unused, until you actually go through the tutorial and they quizzically mention a trick button, but they don't tell you which button that is. That's the left trigger. And holding the trigger down in conjunction with certain directions on the control stick will allow you to do tricks. But it kind of also takes away from your ability to steer, which is a wee bit awkward. Oh, but what's even better? Once you do your tricks, you can unlock sort of a boost, which is mapped to the white button. And I don't know about you, I'm thinking this game was designed with a different controller in mind, because my white button on my Halo green Xbox controller is where my palm is just to hold the thing. So in order to use this boost, you have to actively take your hand off the controller just to activate it, which means you're going to already be decelerating. So could be I'm not working with optimal equipment here, but it's definitely not ideal. And then weirdly enough, other buttons are just not used. So it's not using the whole controller layout, but given the fact that B and Y are also used for very situational controls, still means they're going to be used, so even if you can remap them, there's not really a way to effectively do this without it still being kind of awkward. Again, might be my controller being the issue here, but still not great. And just in general, in terms of control, while you can select one of many different bikes, and you know, the customization of your bikes and later your racer is actually really cool, they all handle really sloppily. Like, it just feels like if you want precise movement in this game, you're just not gonna get it. So that's not exactly ideal. Another thing worth mentioning in the negatives, and generally linked to controls, is the camera. Because when you move side to side to evade any sort of obstacle or to get around a turn or whatever, the camera tries to compensate by gyroscopically rotating around your character, and maybe it's just me, but that felt really bloody disorienting. I mean, after a while I kinda got used to it, but it still was pretty bad. And while you've got 3 different types of control scheme, a close to the bike control scheme, a slightly farther away from the bike control scheme, and a first-person POV, none of them really felt all that comfortable to use. It definitely feels like, if nothing else, they could have had a static camera control, but this game does not. So in terms of controls, this game already kind of has a bad start. While I did mention it briefly, the tutorial, also your driver's license exam or whatever, it's not exactly great, because at best it's just kind of unclear what you need to do. It'll say, use the trick button plus X on the control pad and you'll do a trick, but since I don't have a actual manual with me, I would then have to quit out of the entire tutorial, figure out what the hell button they're talking about because they don't display it, and then have to start the tutorial again because you can't start halfway down for whatever reason. Yeah, the tutorial, also not ideal. However, once you actually get into the proper racing, there's actually a fair amount to like about this game. It's still pretty hit or miss, but still, there's some good here. For one thing, they've got a lot of modes. Time trial mode, single race mode, Grand Prix mode. There's just a bunch of different modes to unlock. Now, granted, you're going to start out with very little to work with. Initially, you have one track in the single race, and you have to go through matches before you'll unlock more race courses for it. But still, once you unlock that stuff, you're going to have a lot to work with, including challenges that each track has based on doing various tricks or starting off with a boost, which add to replayability, which is fantastic. But it wouldn't be much of a racing game if we didn't talk about the actual racing. And it does something pretty unique, I think, for the time, because every lap of a course is sort of unique. Not in the sense that like the entire course layout changes or anything, no, but the various obstacles and various challenges you'll run into on each lap are going to be unique. For example, lap 1 might have a train you'll have to jump over, whereas lap 2 might have a truck you'll have to slide under. Yeah, there's some acrobatic stuff in this game, which does feel a little bit awkward, but it definitely ups the cool factor, and honestly, that is the entire reason it's in this game. It needed some kind of hook, and the coolness factor is pretty much it. Or in another lap, you might be chased by the police, and if you get caught, your respawn timer doubles, which can give you a massive disadvantage over your competition. And this game runs without run rules. So there's always going to be traffic, and it's randomized, and some of the people drive extra fast and erratically, and they're a real challenge to deal with. Yeah, these guys can really screw you over, and it feels a little unfair at times, but on the bright side, your competition seems to be just as much at the mercy of them as you are. Speaking of your competition, yeah, this game features ridiculous amounts of rubber banding. I mean, I once got knocked down, put into the very last position, and I drove for about 5 seconds, and then I literally saw the entire racetrack worth of competition all clumped together in one spot. It's like they all stopped, had a picnic, just to wait for me to pass them. And then once you pass them, suddenly they're able to speed up past you. So rubber banding in this game isn't great, but this game has a great thing to sort of counteract that, which is this game also plays road rash rules, because you can knock your opponents off their bikes, which is fantastically satisfying. Also, I'm pretty sure I'm obligated to automatically love any time where you can take out your opponent like that. It's just a rule. I don't make them, I just live by them. But yeah, that jerk who's been tailing you for the past 30 seconds about to pass you, kick him off into a car, show him who's boss. Basically, while the controls and the camera are definitely lackluster, the actual racing component of the, well, racing, it's pretty damn fun. It's got an excellent sense of speed as well, which means you're gonna feel fairly immersed in it, you know, when you're not spectacularly crashing into the oncoming SUV, or whatever. There is one other thing about gameplay I'd like to talk about before we move on, and that is track design. Because while there are a fair number of tracks, 16 in all I counted, they're a little weird because they seem to favor like ridiculous hairpin turns, and while they're certainly manageable once you get proper turning down in this game, they just don't feel natural in a racing game, and they really just seem like awkward level design. Which is unfortunate because the mechanics of the unique laps and whatever, that actually makes the levels fun to drive in, but the really tight, awkward turns do not. Still, I gotta say, racing in Speed Kings, pretty fun once you get past the awkward controls and stuff. Now, the overall presentation to Speed Kings is, well, at best it's mediocre. Visually, the tracks look great, and the racers and the customizable aspects of them, as well as the sense of speed, are all pretty damn good. I will make some complaints about the animation, however. Like, when you're racing it's fine, but at the start of the race I saw some really low quality animation that just kind of felt weird and out of place, especially considering how good the rest of the game looks comparatively. And audio-wise, honestly, without messing with the settings, you're never even going to hear the sounds over your bike. It's kind of that bad. But having listened to the music, it is pretty much stock music. Like, it just sounds generic and like almost inappropriately out of place. Like, it just doesn't sound like it's music for a high-speed racing game like the actual visuals convey and the gameplay feels like. And in turn, this means that the presentation is at best just kind of there and not really all that special or worth mentioning. Now, if you want to get a copy of Speed Kings on the Xbox, it'll be about $10. That's not too bad. I still say that the controls and the disorienting camera kind of keeps me from wholly recommending it, even at that price. I would try and see if you could get it for $5 or so. That would probably be a fair price for it, because there's a lot of style in this game, and the actual racing is legitimately fun. Again, controls and camera notwithstanding. But at its best, Speed Kings is kind of an above-average racing game, if that. At its worst, it's just kind of nauseating and frustrating and not fun. And that's the frustrating thing, because there's definitely bits of this game that show that the people who made it really did want to make something special. But at the same time, the glue that is the rest of the game that holds those special bits together feel just lackluster and honestly lazy. So Speed Kings does not get a full recommendation or anything, but if you can get it for cheap, it's not bad. It's definitely got enough tracks to at least be able to keep your interest for a while. It's got style points, and if nothing else, you can kick your opponents off their bikes. And that's gotta count for something.